All right, good morning. Welcome back here to Trader Minute. Great to have you aboard. Let's go take a look at a few things here. Was asked about some of the setups that I like out there and some of the things that are happening. Let's go and take a look here. Let's start with MRO. That's the trade we're in, right? And MRO here has been up, down, all around. It just pulled back over the last about 30 minutes. It's pulled back about 60 cents. Here's the 1 minute chart on here. You can see kind of fly up and fly back down. In the context of things, it's not a major move. We had a little bit of volume come in as it kind of exhausted to the upside in the ultra short term here. But as far as affecting the position in any way, shape, or form, no, the move doesn't. Would I be a little nervous if it went negative here today? Sure, absolutely. But overall continues to be in a nice position. Myro, you mentioned IOC, okay, and IOC is kind of in the Tesoro group here. Very nice, very strong move to the upside. Does it probably go higher? Yes. But with something like this, I get concerned. Look back here in July as I zoom in. We get a real nice move up. And yes, does it go higher? It does. But it has these two real bad days of selling first. So does it have 2, 3 days worth of trouble in it? Maybe. If you get in now, uh, that would really hurt to have those 2 days in. But if you don't, and you're saying, well, I want to wait for 2, 3 days worth of selling, there's a chance you can miss it, and IOC just continues on higher. And that's always the risk when dealing with some of these really high flyers. I'll show you some of the setups that are pretty interesting here today. Honeywell breaking above Thursday's highs here today. Love to see it coming off the highs a little bit, but in a very bullish position overall. I mentioned earlier KRE with a strong bullish continuation pattern. We had this rocket ship up here. It pulled back. It's now starting to truck a little bit higher. Close above 38 and a half. Close above 38 and a half would be really strong here for KRE. Um, Enough to make me run after it right here. We'll see how it kind of is into the close. We saw it kind of make all of its gains here within the last 2 hours. And so to see it above 38.60 is bullish here. But some of its components aren't having similar follow through. It's kind of being led by a few major ones. I'd love to see Zion's break out above 29 and a half here, or Key Bank. Key Bank breaking out above 13. But either way, it's some of the most bullish action that we're seeing in the market is with these regional banks. Now, State Street, while not necessarily a regional per se, has some regional elements. This one had a big gap down Thursday, came back, went positive. We're talking about a stock that gapped down 3 days in a row essentially last week and continued to find buyers, getting that fresh push above the 7 today. Not a whole lot of volume on this yet. Mondays we tend to see a little bit lower volumes overall in the marketplace, but one that has some potential setting up here to the upside here with State Street. Getting out of the banks, take a look at Medtronic here, MDT. Tried to break out last week, low volume, hit into options expiration, hit into the upper Bollinger Band here. Okay, hit into the upper band, and overall trying to hold on to the 7. Would love to see this thing close above 59 or start to trade above 59 to say, hey, we can ride it to 62. But not sure that we'll get that. We'll get that just yet here. But overall, as far as an upside entry point based on last week's upside triggers, it's set up here very, very nicely overall. Let's take a look here as far as downside, some potential downside here in the marketplace. Microsoft. A report came out this morning that if Microsoft doesn't get the right CEO, there may be 10% downside here on Microsoft. What does that mean? Okay, what does that mean here for Microsoft? Well, Microsoft's made this really nice run as they have been in this. There's been all the speculation about who's going to be their CEO, and the leading candidate is from Ford. Okay, is from Ford, and if he doesn't get that position, the talk is that Microsoft could fall pretty good, down to about 34 is where they say. Okay, uh, in general, it's a tough one to play. You're playing the fundamentals, not the technicals, when you're dealing with Microsoft. But if you want to bet that, hey, one of the other five candidates wins out and we see a sharp pullback, 38 is the stopping point. 38 is the stopping point here for Microsoft to play it lower. Another one here in the oil gas drilling area is Weatherford, and this isn't giving any kind of vibe, trend rider, downside signals at all. This is just a matter of something weakening momentum, hitting a significantly overvalued, um, area, and having the sharp downside action. I believe that was on Tuesday last week after busting into a new high. Low volume rally into the 17 expiration. Look, this would be an aggressive short. This would be a very aggressive short, and I would use Friday's highs as a stopping point around 17.15. But it's one that to see one or two down days come in where it takes it back down into like 16.20, $16 area. You do have some technical signs, some weakening momentum oscillators coming in that could be in play, especially after some of the lower high action that we saw on expiration here with Weatherford. Yeah, 1T, great point. Yeah, there was some significant 13F buy action. By 13F buy action, basically we're talking about the whales, your Warren Buffett, George Soros, Carl Icahns, those types of individuals or funds having bought into Microsoft over the last little bit, and absolutely has been. Like I said, it's one of those things where if they get their CEO, they'll keep buying in. If they don't, to see those types of individuals pull out pretty quickly. Not out of the realm of past possibilities. Look, there are not a lot of short triggers out there. I'm stretching. I'm really stretching here. I mean, there's Tesla, and there's a little bit in some of the other social media that are just beautiful to the downside. But when I'm talking Weatherford, I'm talking Microsoft, I'm stretching here. I mean, these are aggressive shorts. These aren't necessarily fantastic setups overall. These are just ones that if we see the market go flat or start to pull back a little, that may underperform. Weatherford here, yeah, low volume, right? On any major run, okay, on any major stock run, you tend to see the stock run end on big volume. And then it tends to kind of start to go down on low volume. So you can make that argument. We had some of the big volume come in up around 17 because of the market, because of the sector, it stayed up. If you want to make that argument, it's going to get that play down. 17.10, 17.15 is the stop there. And again, that's for very aggressive, shorting. Another one that, I make no secrets about liking short. I don't quite have an entry here, is with Yelp. And kind of Facebook goes into that same category. And Facebook breaking below 47.5 today. Now, that's a pretty bearish move overall. And it's going to have some pretty good volumes on it. And it basically just tells me, all right, they tried to push Facebook up ahead of expiration, but to see Facebook break below 45 is what I expect to see. But yeah, as you mentioned, Vaughn, the social media stocks have strong bounce back potential at all times, right? I mean, when we're talking about some of these stocks that are set up on the short side, the Teslas, the Facebooks of the world, we're talking about stocks that you could wake up and see a $2, $3, or 4%, 5% gap up. They can be pretty daunting. They can be pretty dangerous here to play. Which is why, for the challenge for the first trade, I decided not to go after Tesla just because of that risk factor there with those. Okay. Yeah, Tesoro continues to ride high here. Continues to have major swings. If you're still riding on Tesoro here, please cash out some, but anything break below the 7-day moving average is your cue to say enough's enough. Okay. Yeah, Vaughn, do any of these Chinese stocks look chaseable? Yeah, I mean, I went through them here this morning, most of the names, and I couldn't find anything that I was excited to pull the trigger on. You know me, I kind of like Kihu, one of the best. It's one of my favorites in the whole Chinese group overall. But even Kihu's a little tough to get excited about right here. Baidu, probably one of the best fundamentally, but Baidu, just look at it historically. Gets this far from the seven, it's going to pull back or go flat or something for the seven to play catch up there. Even something like China Mobile getting a little more conservative in the China group here. To see this thing pull back 50 cents to a buck, would not be out of the realm of possibilities. And I'd much rather let them pull back a little. And yes, Vaughn, that's it. I'm not excited because they're just up too much in the short term, right? Just they've had some really good news, right? And these Chinese stocks, when they push so far above the seven, that's not necessarily bearish. In fact, a lot of times that means okay, they're probably still going to go higher, but you can typically get a better entry, and that's what I would expect to see out of most of these names. PetroChina here, PTR, perhaps one of the most bullish moves out here from a pure charting standpoint. And you start backing these names out into weekly charts. That we're not talking about small breakouts. We're talking about major breakouts on these names. That I don't expect you to get a huge pullback or a huge amount of weakness, but a little bit into the end of the day, maybe tomorrow, maybe Wednesday. That might be pushing it if you're looking for a pullback in these names. But even you take something like China Mobile, CHL, they're all pushing back up above the 7-week moving averages as well. And so bodes very well for them. Now, some of the other ones, like some of the other, would I say, maybe more junk stocks within the Chinese sector or Chinese group, where you're talking about your more volatile names like the CYOUs and stuff. I wouldn't be as excited about these, but some of your really well established Chinese names on any little bit of a pullback are set up extremely well here. Okay. Tom, yeah, BVN. The mining company. This was on Carl's top three. The Trend Rider Bear yesterday. Um, as far as a target on this and Trend Riders, targets are difficult. They are really difficult. 1150 to 12, back to September's lows is realistic. I'm a little concerned about this 13 because of all the volume here. what does it do here at 13? This is the first minor support level here for BVN. It is minor. The more major level is in that 1150 to 12. But when you're talking about a stock on such a downward trend, to see it bust like back here in June on a downside trend rider signal, and to just see it bust and push heavily, strongly lower, we definitely that's definitely not out of the realm of possibilities there. You kind of get into some of these other stocks like the BTUs of the world that have been on these nice little short squeezes, and now within these material groups starting to pull back here. Uh, from a short standpoint, these are some of the better areas. Walter gets this little exhaustion up. Now it's pulled back to see it come back to 15 here. Wouldn't be real surprising there. Okay. Bottom line, when I look for just pure triggers here today, whether it be Vibe or Trendrider, and Carl will bring it up, or other things, there's not a whole lot of pure triggers out there, and that's a product of the market too, only being pretty flat, right? Broader market's pretty flat itself. We do have some strength continuing within the rails. So something like CSX, which we talked about last week, continuing its march higher, very bullish. UNP, Canadian Pacific, these rails continue to be on fire, and that bodes well for the market continuing higher. Yeah, Chipotle to Mexican Grill. What's its support? Yeah, 520. 520 is kind of where that support level would be. I forget who it was. I was mentioning Chipotle short on Friday. It's a tough one to get short, in my opinion. But if you're getting short here, you're looking around 520 as the snapback area. Okay. Yeah, TCK I mapped out this weekend from a bullish standpoint. Coming back down below 26 and snapping back. You don't really have any volume on the move higher here. You are dealing with a downward sloping 200-day moving average. The one thing, if I'll draw it here on TCK. The one thing you're dealing with is what could potentially be a little bit of a bear flag here. And these are always a little nervy because they tend to resolve themselves with another leg lower. And perhaps one of the biggest signs of a bear flag is no volume on the uptick. And yeah, we haven't had any volume on the uptick. Now, in 2013, have a lot of these things resolved themselves higher? Yeah, absolutely. But would I love to see TCK down here in the 25 after that bear flag with a little volume coming in and maybe buy it there? Yeah, that'd probably be a little more ideal. Will you get that? Not necessarily. There's a lot of stuff out there. Let me just, your Pepsis of the world, right? Which just there's no triggers here. Are they potentially rounding off and weakening and topping a little bit? Yeah, they are. You're getting a little bit of a bounce in the TLT, and so to see something like Pepsi and Coke, start to potentially weaken here, your AT&Ts and your Verizons, but you only have potential weakness signs. You don't have any bearish triggers, and in many ways, you can kind of make better arguments to the upside for them than you really can for the downside on many of these. You're still seeing things like Raytheon and Lockheed Martin, even though these have been in just incredibly overbought positions, continuing to rise and continuing to push higher. And as long as we see significantly overbought stocks continue to move higher and for their pullbacks to only be very minor, that continues to benefit the bulls overall. And one of the things that you never want to do is underestimate how much a market can move when volumes dry up. And we'll see volumes dry up next week. And a lot of people will say, well, you know what? It's not a real good week to trade. Well, you still see some pretty strong moves, some exaggerations, and that still moves option prices in a big way. So, to see the market melt up a little bit here and into next week, uh, just wouldn't be is not out of the realms of possibility here for it. Okay. I expect we see a few more triggers coming into the close today. Probably more building tomorrow morning than we do even today. Just being the Monday after options expiration. Okay. Marathon. Before I hop off here, nothing really to say about Marathon. It's off of its highs. It's off of its lows, and it had a nice surge. It's had a nice drop. But to see Marathon have this type of activity during a day isn't that big of a deal. If you've traded Marathon before, these are rather normal types of moves. 36 and a half and holding above there today would be nice overall here for MRO. Okay. All righty. Well, thanks for hopping on. I'm going to turn the chat and stuff over here to Carl, and he'll take you forward for the next little bit. I will be available, so if you have any questions for me, let me know. Yeah, Nat, normal holding period for options. Generally for the challenge, I like 3 to 5 days, but each trade varies. I don't necessarily put a huge um, timetable on that. Okay. Yeah, Tom. As long as MRO close higher today, you'll be happy. Yep. Good deal. All right. Well, thanks for hopping on, and we'll talk to you a bit later. Have a good one. Take care.